Your monthly check is about to change, and what happens in the next few weeks could determine whether you're part of the group getting more money or left wondering why your neighbor's payment went up while yours stayed the same. Right now, the Social Security Administration is finalizing calculations that will affect over 68 million Americans. And the numbers coming out for October 2025 are creating some serious confusion. Here's what nobody's talking about. This isn't just about a standard cost of living adjustment. There are specific eligibility requirements tied to when you started claiming benefits, your work history, and even the type of Social Security you're receiving that will determine if you qualify for this new payment amount. Some folks who've been collecting for years might see a bigger bump than recent retirees, while others could be surprised to find their increase is smaller than expected. The difference between qualifying for the full raise versus a partial adjustment could mean hundreds of dollars over the course of the year. And most people don't even know there are different tiers to this increase. Let me break down exactly who's getting what, and more importantly, how to find out which category you fall into before that deposit hits your account. So, let's get right into what's actually happening with your Social Security payment this month, because there's a lot of misinformation floating around out there, and I want to make sure you have the real facts. The first thing you need to understand is that Social Security operates on a very specific calendar system, and October is actually one of the most important months of the year when it comes to payment adjustments. Now, you might be thinking that the cost of living adjustment always happens in January, and you'd be partially right. But what most people don't realize is that October is when the Social Security Administration starts implementing changes that affect certain groups of beneficiaries differently than others. The way this works is actually pretty complex, but I'm going to walk you through it step by step so you can figure out exactly where you stand. The Social Security Administration uses something called the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers, which sounds like a mouthful. But it's basically just a way of measuring how much prices have gone up for everyday things, like groceries, gas, housing, and medical care. What happened this year is that inflation has been behaving in some unusual ways. And that's creating a situation where the adjustment for October 2025 is coming in at a different rate than many experts predicted back in January. Now, here's where it gets interesting, and this is something that catches a lot of people off guard. Not everyone receives their Social Security payment on the same schedule. And the date you receive your payment can actually give you clues about which category of beneficiary you fall into and how this raise is going to affect you personally. If you started receiving Social Security benefits before May 1997, you're part of what they call the original beneficiary group, and your payment comes on the 3rd of every month. These folks are seeing their adjustments calculated slightly differently than people who started receiving benefits after that date. Then you've got everyone else who's divided up based on their birth date, with payments coming on the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th Wednesday of each month. The reason this matters for the October 2025 raise is that the Social Security Administration processes these payments in batches. And depending on which batch you're in, the timing of when you see the new amount in your bank account might vary by a couple of weeks. But the timing isn't the only thing that's different. The actual amount of the raise can vary significantly from person to person. And this is where a lot of confusion comes in. Your payment amount is based on something called your primary insurance amount, which is calculated using your highest 35 years of earnings during your working life. If you didn't work for 35 full years, the Social Security Administration fills in those missing years with 0, which brings down your average and results in a lower monthly payment. Now, when they apply a cost of living adjustment, they're applying a percentage increase to your primary insurance amount, which means that if you had a higher benefit to begin with, you're going to see a larger dollar increase than someone who has a lower benefit. This is just simple math, but it leads to situations where one person might see their check go up by $150, while their friend only sees an increase of $80, even though they're both receiving the same percentage increase. The percentage for October 2025 is being calculated based on the inflation data from the 3rd quarter of this year. And early estimates are suggesting it's going to be somewhere in a range that's higher than what we saw in some recent years, but not quite as high as the big jumps we experienced in 2022 and 2023. Now, let's talk about who actually qualifies for this new payment amount, because this is where things get really specific. If you're receiving retirement benefits based on your own work record, you're definitely going to see this adjustment applied to your payment. The same goes for people receiving survivor benefits, which means if you're getting payments based on a deceased spouse's work record, you're included in this raise as well. Disability benefits through Social Security. Disability insurance are also subject to these cost of living adjustments. So, if you're receiving SSDI, your payment is going up too. But here's something that trips people up all the time. If you're receiving Supplemental Security Income, which is often abbreviated as SSI, that's actually a different program with different rules, even though it's administered by the Social Security Administration. SSI recipients do get cost of living adjustments, but the timing and the way it's calculated can be slightly different. And there are income limits and asset limits that can affect your SSI payment in ways that don't apply to regular Social Security, retirement, or disability benefits. Another group that needs to pay close attention to this October 2025 raise is people who are receiving both Social Security and a pension from work that wasn't covered by Social Security. This might apply to you if you worked for certain government agencies, school districts, or other employers who had their own pension systems instead of paying into Social Security. There are two provisions that can affect your Social Security payment in these situations, and they're called the Windfall Elimination Provision and the Government Pension Offset. These rules can reduce your Social Security benefit. And when a cost of living adjustment is applied, it's applied after these reductions are calculated, which means your raise might be smaller than you expect if you're subject to one of these provisions. The Windfall Elimination Provision affects your own retirement or disability benefit, while the Government Pension Offset affects spousal or survivor benefits, and understanding which one applies to you can make a big difference in how you plan your finances. Let's also talk about people who are still working while receiving Social Security benefits, because this is another situation where the October 2025 raise interacts with other rules in ways that can be confusing. If you're under your full retirement age and you're still earning income from work, there's an earnings limit that can cause Social Security to withhold some of your benefits. If you earn above that threshold for 2025, that earnings limit has already been set, and if you go over it, Social Security withholds $1 in benefits for every $2 you earn above the limit. Now, here's the thing about the cost of living adjustment in October. Your benefit amount is going up. But if you're subject to the earnings test, that doesn't change the earnings limit itself. What this means is that you might see your monthly payment increase, but if you're earning enough from work to trigger the earnings test, you might still have some of your benefits withheld. However, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, because once you reach your full retirement age, Social Security recalculates your benefit to give you credit for any months when your benefits were withheld due to the earnings test. So, you're not really losing that money, it's just being delayed. There's also a very specific group of people who might see a more significant change in their October 2025 payment. And these are folks who are reaching certain milestone ages, or who are experiencing changes in their household composition. For example, if you're turning 70 this year, you're no longer accumulating delayed retirement credits, and your benefit is now at its maximum level. So, the cost of living adjustment is being applied to your fully maximized benefit amount. Similarly, if you've recently lost a spouse and you're transitioning from receiving a retirement benefit based on your own record to receiving a survivor benefit based on your deceased spouse's record, or vice versa, the October raise is going to be applied to whichever benefit you're currently receiving, and that might result in a different dollar amount than you were expecting based on what your spouse was receiving before they passed away. Medicare premiums are another factor that plays into how much of this October 2025 raise you'll actually see in your bank account. And this is something that frustrates a lot of beneficiaries because it can feel like the government is giving with one hand and taking with the other. Most people who receive Social Security and are enrolled in Medicare Part B have their premium automatically deducted from their Social Security payment. Medicare premiums can change from year to year, and when they go up, that increase comes right out of your Social Security check before you ever see it. There's a rule called the Hold Harmless Provision that's supposed to protect most Social Security beneficiaries from having their net payment decrease because of a Medicare premium increase. But this protection doesn't apply to everyone. If you're a high earner and you pay income-related monthly adjustment amounts, or if you're new to Medicare, or if you're paying a late enrollment penalty, you might not be protected by the Hold Harmless rule, which means you could potentially see a smaller net increase in your payment, even though Social Security itself is going up. The mechanics of how this October payment is actually processed is also worth understanding, especially if you're someone who likes to keep close track of your money. and wants to know exactly when to expect the new amount. The Social Security Administration typically announces cost of living adjustments in October, but the actual implementation of the new payment amounts happens on a rolling basis depending on your payment schedule. Direct deposit is always the fastest way to receive your benefits. And if you're still receiving paper checks, you should know that those can be delayed by mail processing times and other factors that are completely outside of Social Security's control. Setting up direct deposit is actually really straightforward, and you can do it through your My Social Security account online, or you can call Social Security directly and set it up over the phone. The advantage of direct deposit isn't just speed, it's also security. Because paper checks can get lost or stolen, and dealing with that situation is a huge hassle that takes time and can leave you without your money while Social Security issues our replacement. One thing I want to make absolutely clear is that you don't need to do anything to receive this October 2025 raise. You don't need to apply for it. You don't need to call Social Security to request it. And you definitely don't need to pay anyone to help you get it. This is an automatic adjustment that Social Security applies to everyone who qualifies, and it happens without any action on your part. Unfortunately, there are scammers out there who prey on seniors by claiming you need to verify your information or pay a fee to receive your cost of living adjustment. And these scams have become increasingly sophisticated. The Social Security Administration will never call you out of the blue and ask for your Social Security number or your bank account information. And they will never threaten you with arrest or demand immediate payment. If someone contacts you claiming to be from Social Security and asks for personal information or money, that's a scam, and you should hang up immediately and report it to the Social Security Administration's Office of the Inspector General.